Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Nitya Gora Haribo, 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 Nitya Gora Haribo. Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyutama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai. So welcome everyone this morning. Which verses is it, Tulsi Saki? Oh, we're starting chapter 18. And we're going from 1 to what? Okay, let me find it here. We don't have Jaishnav with the book today. So, phone it is. Okay. 10:18 Okay, we're starting a new chapter. Lord Balaram slays the demon Pralamba. So 1 to 16 in the focus verses? Okay. Do we have a mic? Roaming mic? I'll read until that thing gets going. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, surrounded by his blissful companions who constantly chanted his glories, Sri Krishna then entered the village of Raj, which was decorated with herds of cows. So we're continuing on from pastime of Krishna dancing on the hoods of Kaliya. And as it turned out, after that incident, they were all so hungry and tired that they didn't go home. They all just camped out on the bank of the Yamuna. So it was that must have been a really nice experience, right? Because everyone was just there with Krishna, sleeping by the bank of the Yamuna. So then they woke up next morning, and then they all went back home. And it says here that he was surrounded by his blissful companions. So that's one of the Krishna has 64 transcendental qualities, and there are 50 of those qualities that all living beings, including ourselves, can have in at least some small quantity, not as much as Krishna, but some small quantity, we can have those. And then above and beyond that, there are 10 additional qualities that other Vishnu Tattva expansions of Krishna, and other forms of God, expansions of Krishna can have. But then there are 4 unique qualities that only Krishna has, and one of those qualities is that he's always surrounded by devotees who are imbued with ecstatic love for him. So that's being mentioned here, is that he was surrounded by his blissful companions, and what were they doing? Constantly chanting his glories. So that's something that makes Krishna very happy, is that when we chant his holy names, we chant his glories. So that's why when we come to the temple and the curtains open for darshanarti, what do? We chant. We chant Krishna's glories, we chant his names, we chant songs about his pastimes, right? Like Yashomati Nandana Vrajavaranaga. And we glorify his devotees, Srila Prabhupada. And so he's very happy to hear himself being glorified and hear his devotees being glorified. And so like that, he went back to the village of Raj along with his cows. Okay, next verse, please.
While Krishna and Balaram were thus enjoying life in Vrindavan in the guise of ordinary cowherd boys, the summer season gradually appeared. This season is not very pleasing to embodied souls.
So who has been in Vrindavan during the summer, June, July? It's not very pleasing to conditioned souls, right? It's so hot, it's like deathly hot. I remember I lived in Vrindavan for 10 years, so we spent a few summers there. And it's like, as soon as the sun comes up in the morning, it's just like, when you open the door to your house, it's like opening the oven door. It's like that heat, And when the hot wind blows, it's like, you feel like your whole body's just getting desiccated. So generally, like, people will go to Mangalarti, they'll go do whatever they have to do, and by 10 a.m. at the latest, they're like in the house with the doors closed, windows closed, curtains closed. If they're lucky enough to have AC, the AC on, fan on. Otherwise, they're just putting on, like, I remember we used to like put on like wet clothes, make like your clothes wet, wring them out, put them on, and sit under the fan and drink water, just to like survive through especially the month of June was a killer. So there's a small purport here. In chapter 18 of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada comments as follows: the summer season in India is not very much welcomed because of the excessive heat. But in Vrindavan, everyone was pleased because summer there appeared just like spring. So even though it was summer, and generally the summer is not very pleasing, but because of Krishna's presence, everything was nice. Right? Krishna's presence made everything very comfortable and pleasing. All right, next verse.
Nevertheless, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead was personally staying in Vrindavan along with Balaram, summer manifested the qualities of spring. Such are the features of the land of Vrindavan.
So when we're in Krishna consciousness, then things that Krishna kind of takes the edge off of the material experience for us. So even though, it's Kali Yuga and there's so many difficulties in this age, but devotees don't experience the harshness and the brutality and the misery of material life the way non-devotees do, because we have Krishna, and Krishna kind of buffers it, and he enables the devotees to kind of like float above a lot of the hardships of life. Yes, next verse, please.
The wind waiting over the waves of the lakes and flowing rivers carried.
Text 4. In Vrindavan.
In Vrindavan, the loud sound of waterfalls covered the cricket's noise, and clusters of trees constantly moistened by spray from those waterfalls beautified the entire area.
This and the following 3 verses describe how Vrindavan manifested the features of spring even during the summer season. So now he's giving the details. How they stayed cool. So they had, so the waterfalls coming down from Govardhan Hill, right? Waterfalls are always coming, and then the wind would blow the little droplets of water from the waterfall and make a mist. Actually, there's a cooling system in Vrindavan. They have this cooling system. So this is kind of like for people who can't afford to have full-blown AC. And this was us for one summer. Is that they put this thing in the window, and it's called an air cooler. So what it does is it has a little pump in it, and it pumps water up, and then and then on 3 sides. So it sits in your window. So one side is in the window, and the 3 sides are. They have this like straw. It's like this. Screen of straw on 3 sides, so that it pumps water up and the water trickles down through the straw, and then there's a fan in it that's blowing the air in, and it forces the air through the wet straw, and it causes the air becomes cool when the water evaporates. So it kind of creates the same effect as like a waterfall, that air is blowing through fine droplets of water, and it actually is quite cooling. Yeah, it really makes it's humid, but it's cooling. So that was what was happening. That was the waterfall effect. And so the trees were staying nice and green, and everything was spring-like. Okay, next, please.
The wind wafting over the waves of the lakes and flowing rivers carried away the pollen of many varieties of lotuses and water lilies, and then cooled the entire Vrindavan area. Thus, the residents there did not suffer from the heat generated by the blazing summer sun and seasonal forest fires. Indeed, Vrindavan was abundant with fresh green grass.
So this was the other cooling system, is that the wind would blow over the lakes and rivers. So we've got the Yamuna. When you go to Vraj, there's so many ponds, right? Everywhere there's some kund. Shama Kund, Radha Kund, Govinda Kund, and Apsara Kund, and Chandra Sarovara, and Kusum Sarovara, right? There are all these bodies of water everywhere. And you probably noticed that, sometimes on a hot day, just like feeling really hot, and then you go sit by a lake or river, and it's like, it's cool. Or if you go to the beach, it's like a little cooler. Why? Because the air is blowing over the water, and it's evaporating, and it's having a cooling effect. So evaporation causes cooling. That's why, right? Perspiration works, is because your skin gets wet, and when the air blows on it, it cools you off. So it's like the earth has its perspiration system through all of these lakes and rivers and waterfalls and rain and mist. So Vrindavan was being cooled. Okay, text 6.
With their flowing waves, the deep rivers drenched their banks, making them damp and muddy. Thus, the rays of the sun, which were as fierce as poison, could not evaporate the earth's sap or parch its green grass.
So not only were the rivers just there cooling things off, but sometimes the waves would overflow the banks, and then they'd make the ground around the river also wet, and that would also help. This is Krishna's engineering system. Okay, text 7.
Flowers beautifully decorated the forest of Vrindavan, and many varieties of animals and birds filled it with sound. The peacocks and bees sang, and the cuckoos and cranes cooed.
So this is another feature of spring, right? That, as we say, April showers bring May flowers. So in the spring, all the flowers bloom again. During the winter months, right, you look out and it's like the trees are barren, the grass is brown, there's not a lot of vegetation, there's not a lot of flowers blooming. But when spring comes, then the leaves start budding, right? We just saw the leaves came back on the trees so quickly, and then flowers are blooming, and all the animals are happy because now it's going to be warm, the winter's over, and so the birds are singing and the animals are coming out and making their sounds, and the bees are buzzing because the bees are super happy because the flowers are blooming. That means pollen and nectar and honey. So the bees are having a heyday, and all these spring-like sounds are there in the atmosphere in Vrindavan.
Intending to engage in pastimes, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, accompanied by Lord Balaram and surrounded by the cowherd boys and the cows, entered the forest of Vrindavan as he played his flute.
So when the weather is nice, everybody wants to go out and play, right? If it's too hot, you're like, ugh, let's stay inside. If it's too cold, you're like, oof, I'm not going anywhere, right? But in the spring and in the fall, it's especially like, we actually, Dallas climate is very similar to Vrindavan climate. I think it's on a similar line of latitude. And so we have the same experience. It's springtime. Like, I grew up in way northern New York near the Canadian border. And like summer was a time when you were out all the time because it never got too hot, right? But here it gets like so hot. So anyways, so in the spring and in the fall, we want to go out. So now this is like, even though it's summer, it's exhibiting the qualities of spring. And so Krishna's like really enthusiastic to go out. Let's go out and play. The weather is so nice. The waterfalls are making it cool. The rivers are cool. The bees are buzzing. The birds are singing. The animals are making them sounds. The peacocks are crowing. What a lovely day. Let's go out and play. So Krishna goes out with his friends.
Decorating themselves with newly grown leaves, along with peacock feathers, garlands, clusters of flower buds, and colored minerals, Balaram, Krishna, and their cowherd friends danced, wrestled, and sang.
So the boys would have all kinds of fun, right? They didn't need toys. They didn't need devices. They didn't need, social media or TV or anything else. They were living in nature, and they were playing with all the things that nature was providing. So they were picking leaves off the trees and flowers off the bushes and making them into garlands. They were getting, there's some stones in Vrindavan that if you rub them, some like pigments will come, different colors, some of them blackish, some of them brown, some reddish, some orange. And so they would get water and they would rub those, and they would make different like kind of paints, and then they would put gopi dots on themselves. They would make decorations, and they would dance. So they all had musical instruments. Krishna would play his flute. Other cowherd boys had drums. Some had buffalo horns. Like I think it was yesterday, Kalachandji had a buffalo horn hanging off his belt. So they would play those buffalo horns like bugles. And so they had a band. They were doing kirtan. Basically, they would go out doing kirtan and singing and dancing. And sometimes the kirtans would get rough and they would start wrestling in the middle of kirtan. That actually happened. One time I was in Gainesville and I was leading kirtan, and it was late at night. It was a crazy ecstatic kirtan, and it was Govardhan Puja Day, and everybody had just eaten like so many sweets. They make the mountain of sweets. So everyone had just like eaten 25 sweets. And so everyone was on a sugar high. So we went back to the temple, and we just had this crazy kirtan that went until like midnight. And by the end, it got so it was all like young people, and most of them, Westerners, and it got really like head banging kind of kirtan. And the boys started just like picking each other up and twirling each other around and throwing at each other on the floor and doing like pig piles on each other and rolling across the floor. And it was just so fun. It was zany boppers. It was like one of those kirtans that you never forget, So it was a real cowherd boy kirtan. And that's what the cowherd boys do. They get so ecstatic in kirtan, they start jumping and dancing, and then they start spinning each other around, and they start roughing each other up and body slamming and then throwing each other down on the ground and rolling and wrestling. So this is boys will be boys, right? The boys are having fun in this way. Okay, text 10.
As Krishna danced, some of the boys accompanied him by singing, and others by playing flutes, hand cymbals, and buffalo horns, while still others praised his dancing.
Wanting to encourage Sri Krishna, some of the cowherd boys openly praised his dancing. So, yeah, when you're doing something and people are praising you, then it gives you confidence to do more, right? So if someone's dancing and people are looking at it, yeah, go, this is great, wow, amazing. Then, you'll dance more and more enthusiastically, and then that makes it kind of revs the whole thing up. So like that.
O king, demigods disguised themselves as members of the cowherd community, and just as dramatic dancers praise another dancer, worship Krishna and Balaram, who were also appearing as cowherd boys.
So this is nice. So the demigods were very enlivened by these pastimes of Krishna, and they wanted to be a part of it, or at least they wanted to spy on it from a distance. So they would, usually the demigods, they're celestial beings. They dress very opulently, right? They have like beautiful, dazzling clothes bedecked with jewels and gold helmets and earrings, and they have like opulent, like they dress like kings. But Krishna lives in Vrindavan, which is a rural setting. It's a cowherd village. They're cowherd people. They're basically like dairy farmers. They're farm boys. So they dress very simply. They just have their simple, dhotis and turbans, and they have their own style of dressing. It's beautiful. It's not like that they're impoverished, but it's a different style. It's a more simple, villagey style. So then the demigods, they dress themselves up in this village style of dress that was like what any Vrajvasi would wear. Even now when you go to Vraj, you see there's like a particular way that they dress. That they, the men will wear their turbans and their long kurtas. And if you go to Radhakund, they have a specific way that they dress, right? The Radhakund Babas, they all wear the short dhoti, and they all have, and chadar, and they all have like a lot of tulsi, like big tulsi on them. There's kind of like a uniform almost, who the Radhakund Vasis are, at least the male ones, because of the way they dress. So the demigods dressed up like Vrajvasis, and they also went there and praised Krishna and Balaram's dancing.
Krishna and Balaram played with their cowherd boyfriends by whirling about, leaping, hurling, slapping, and fighting. Sometimes Krishna and Balaram would pull the hair on the boys' heads.
So I told you they rough each other up. Boys will be boys. I'll read the purport here. The Acharyas have explained this verse as follows. The word Brahmanai indicates that the boys, pretending they were machines, would sometimes whirl about until they became dizzy. They would also sometimes jump about, Langanai. The word Kshepai indicates that sometimes they would hurl objects like balls or stones, and that sometimes they would grab each other by the arms and throw one another about. Ashbotana means they would sometimes slap another's shoulders or backs, and Vikarshana indicates they would drag one another about in the midst of their play. They drag them along the ground. By the word Niyudhena, arm wrestling and other types of friendly fighting are indicated. So arm wrestling. And the word Kaka Paksha Dharo means that Krishna and Balaram would sometimes grab the hair on the other boys' heads in a playful manner. So they would have a lot of fun. Slapping, fighting, pulling each other's hair. I used to see that. I used to think when I was teaching at this school in Mayapur, so I used to watch the kids playing out in the playground, and it's like there's one way in which the girls play, they'll get in their little circles and they'll be talking and doing their little things, and they might be doing some sports or something like that. And then you see the way the boys play, and it's very different. They'll be they're always like, Mother Kunti's laughing because she raised two boys. So got a chance to see how boys play. And they're just so rough with each other. Like they'll walk up, or just like one boy will walk up to another boy, teenage boys, and they'll just be like, "Hey, how's it going?" They'll just whack each other so hard on the back, like, like it's gotta hurt, like it's like whack. And then the guy just turns around and is like, "Bro, what's up?" Like as if like that was just normal to just like nearly knock someone over. So yeah, and then the boys, they'll like grab each other by the kurta. Sometimes they'll rip the kid's kurta because he grabbed them by the kurta and he swung them around so hard. Or the boys are like always fixing their dhotis because they're falling off, and they'll be dragging each other through the dirt. So yeah, that's how they have fun. So this is all very approved by Krishna. This is what Krishna does. So this is the nature. And so yeah, it's something that, of course, we can't let kids really seriously hurt themselves. But anyways, we have to let the boys play the way boys play. Jai. Okay, text 13, please.
While the other boys were dancing, O King, Krishna and Balaram would sometimes accompany them with song and instrumental music. And sometimes the two lords would praise the boys, saying, "Very good, very good."
Yeah, so sometimes they would have these like dance-a-thons, where they would have competitions to see who was the best dancer. So they'd all be playing musical instruments, and then one boy would dance and he would do his, best dance, and then he would go to the sidelines and another boy would jump in, or they'd push him in the middle. And then sometimes that happens in kirtan, right? Like you're in kirtan, and like let's say the ladies will form a circle or men form a circle, and then one person will go in the middle and dance, spin around, do a whole thing, do like their little number there for a few, 20 seconds or something, then go off to the side, and then someone else will jump in the middle, and then if somebody's too shy to jump in the middle, they'll get thrown into the middle, and then they have to just do something, spontaneously. So yeah, Krishna and the cowherd boys used to do that. So one would be in the middle, and they'd all be like, "Yeah, very good, very good, sadhu, sadhu." Huh? It's bona fide. Yeah, so all these things, these are Krishna's pastimes. So yeah, when we're doing these things in kirtan, it's like, it's so enjoyable, right? It's very enjoyable. Everybody's so happy when these things are going on, when the kirtan gets ecstatic, when people just get off the mental platform and put aside their reservations and self-consciousness and just dance their hearts out, as if no one's looking. And because that's our nature. We're parts and parcels of Krishna, and Krishna enjoys doing those things with his friends, so we also enjoy it because we have the same nature, right? We're qualitatively one with the Lord, but quantitatively very small. And we do those things here, and we will do those things there, right? This is our eternal activity, is dancing in kirtan, glorifying the Lord, and having a blissful time. Okay, next one is 14, right? So this is one of our, let's do this one as the focus verse then. Let's see. Kvachit bilvai, kvachit kumbai.
Kvachit bilvai, kvachit
Kvachamallakamushtibi.
Kvachamallakamushtibi.
Asprishya netra bandhadyai.
Asprishya netra bandhadyai.
Kvachin mriga kagehaya.
Kvachin mriga kagehaya.
Kvachit bilvai, kvachit kumbai.
Kvachit bilvai, kvachit kumbai.
Kvachamallakamushtibi.
Kvachamallakamushtibi.
Asprishya netra bandhadyai.
Asprishya netra bandhadyai.
Kvachin mriga kagehaya.
Kvachin mriga kagehaya.
Please chant.
Kvachit bilvai, kvachit kumbai.
Kvachit bilvai, kvachit kumbai.
Kvachamallakamushtibi.
Kvachamallakamushtibi.
Asprishya netra bandhadyai.
Asprishya netra bandhadyai.
Kvachin mriga kagehaya.
Kvachin mriga kakegaya. Kvachamallakamushtibi. Asprishya netra bandhadyai Kvachin mriga kagehaya Kvachit bilvai kvachit kumbai Kvachamala Asprishya netra bandhadyai Kvachin mriga kagehaya Okay. Kvachit bilvai kvachit kumbai Kvachamala Asprishya netra bandhadyai Kvachin mriga kagehaya. Thank you. So let's do the word for word. We can do this all together. Kvachit, sometimes. Bilvai, with bilva fruits. Kvachit, sometimes. Kumbai, with kumbha fruits. Kvacha, and sometimes. Amalaka mushtibi, with palmfuls of amalaka fruits. Asprishya, with games such as trying to touch one another. Netra bandha, trying to identify another when one is blindfolded. Adya, and so on. Kvachit, sometimes. Mriga, like animals. Khaga, and birds. Ihaya, acting. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sometimes the cowherd boys would play with bilva or kumbha fruits, and sometimes with handfuls of amalaka fruits. At other times, they would play the games of trying to touch one another, or of trying to identify somebody while one is blindfolded. And sometimes they would imitate animals and birds. Report. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains that the word adyai, by other such sports, indicates such games as chasing one another and building bridges. Another pastime would occur at noon while Lord Krishna was taking rest. Nearby, the young cowherd girls would be passing by, singing, and Krishna's boyfriends would pretend to inquire for them about the price of milk. Then the boys would steal yogurt and other items from them and run away. Krishna and Balaram and their friends would also play games in which they would cross the river in boats. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur further explains that the boys would play with fruits by throwing a few in the air and then throwing others to try to hit them. The word netra bandha indicates a game in which one boy would approach a blindfolded boy from behind and place his palms over the blindfolded boy's eyes. Then, simply by the feel of his palms, the blindfolded boy would have to guess who the other boy was. In all such games, the boys put up stakes for the winner, such as flutes or walking sticks. Sometimes the boys would imitate the various fighting methods of the forest animals, and at other times they would chirp like birds. Jai. What an ecstatic purport. Let's just finish our section and we'll get back to this purport, okay? So read text 15. Should I read? They would sometimes, oh, thank you. She didn't come. They would sometimes jump around like frogs, sometimes play various jokes, sometimes ride in swings, and sometimes imitate monarchs. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains the word nripa cheshtaya as follows. In Vrindavan, there was a particular place on the riverbank where people who wanted to cross the Yamuna would pay a small tax. At times, the cowherd boys would assemble in this area and prevent the young girls of Vrindavan from crossing the river, insisting that they had to pay a customs duty first. Such activities were full of joking and laughter. And then the last verse. In this way, Krishna and Balaram played all sorts of well-known games as they wandered among the rivers, hills, valleys, bushes, trees, and lakes of Vrindavan. Jai. So these boys would be out and about all day long, herding the cows, and this was their work, but it wasn't work at all. It was play. It was all play and no work. Of course, sometimes there was work. If the cows wandered off, they had to go and rescue them and herd them back and bring them out at the right time and back at the right time. But while they were out there, the boys were always just playing and playing with each other. It was great fun. So I can see here, like, probably as we were reading this purport, you were thinking, oh, I played that game when I was a kid, right? So they would play tag, right? They would run around and try to touch each other, kind of like freeze tag. I'm sure we've all played that, where you chase one person, you touch them, they get frozen, and then to unfreeze the person. So they would play like that. And then also, I'm sure that's happened to you, that somebody comes from behind you, covers your eyes, and guess who, right? And then you have to like feel their hands, feel their arms, try to listen to their voice, feel their hair or whatever, and figure out who it is. So they would do that. And imitating the animals and birds. I'm sure that, you're outside playing and you hear some bird, and then, you're trying to, with your friends, you'll be trying to imitate. So, and see who can imitate the bird the best. So the boys would do that. And what else does it say there? And in all of these games, they would be wagering, right? They would be betting, right? Okay, let's see who can imitate that bird the best. Oh, I'll bet my flute that he can do it the best. Or, or they do this game where they throw up something. So they had these amala fruit. Amalaki is an amala fruit. It's a little round fruit like that big, and they're hard. So they would throw them up, or maybe throw up a handful of them, and then another one, they would try to, hit one in the air. Have you done that before? That you throw something up and then you try to hit it with something else? We used to do that. You throw a stick up and then you throw a stone to try to hit the stick while it's falling through the air. So, yeah, Krishna would do this. And, what else does it say here? They would play leapfrog, right? Everybody's played this. So they would imitate the frogs. And also it's described sometimes they would try to catch the tails of the monkeys, the young monkeys. So there are a lot of monkeys, and the monkeys climbing up the tree, the tails hanging down, and they would try to grab the tails of the monkeys. I imagine nowadays that could be dangerous. But in those days, the monkeys were not so aggressive. But one of the main things here that the acharyas are mentioning in the purport is how the boys used to tease the girls like anything, right? So this is a favorite pastime of boys, is that they like to tease the girls. When I was young, I remember that the boys used to try to chase the girls, and we had this like jungle gym thing in our school playground that was like, there were bars all along the outside, and there was an empty space inside. And so the boys would basically use that as their prison to keep the girls in. So they would chase the girls, and then they would catch them, and when they caught them, they would take them to this jungle gym thing and make them stand there. And then they had boys guarding the thing, and then the poor girls were trapped in there, and then we had to try to do something to free the girls from the prison, and that was like, they loved doing that. So, yeah. Anyways, so the boys always like to, even in their playful games, they like to tease the girls. So one of the boys' favorite pastimes was that, see, the girls, they were very dutiful, and they would be doing their household duties, helping their mothers with churning the butter and, getting pots. And then, this is how they earned the livelihood, was by taking all their yogurt and ghee and butter to the market. So, they were being very good girls, assisting the family. The boys were doing their duties too, herding the cows, making sure the cows ate the best grass so that they could get nice milk. And then the girls were at home making all that milk into things, like all different marketable items, and taking those pots of things to the market for selling. So the girls would be walking by, and they would have these big clay pots, and they would be carrying them on their heads. So they're all walking and talking, chattering away, and, walking with their pots. And then they'd come to a place where there's like a narrow passageway. And then the boys, or come to the riverside. Different things happen different times. So in Varshana, there's one particular place, what's it called? Something, Shankari Kor? Shankari Kor. Yeah, there's a place where there's there's two steep rocky cliffs, right? And they're and then there's a narrow passageway. Literally, you have to go through there one person at a time. But it's the only way to get from one part of Varshana to the other. And so everybody lives in that part. They have to walk through there. And you see all the school kids going to school in the morning, and they're all walking through there. And so it's a passageway that people use just in daily life. And so every day the gopis would have to walk through this passageway to get their things from Varshana to Chiksholi, Chitra Devi's village on the other side. And so the boy, that was like one of the favorite places where the boys there's like a sitting place up there, and they would be sitting there just waiting for the girls to come, and they would jump down into the passageway, and they would block them, and they would say, where do you think you're going? You have to pay a tax if you want to pass through this place. And then sometimes the gopis would get belligerent. They would refuse to pay the price. They would say, who are you? You're not official at all. And then Krishna would argue, what are you saying? I'm the son of Nanda Maharaj. Do you know what Maharaj means? It means the king. And so all taxes should be paid to the king. And because I'm the king's son, the son is the representative of the father. And so you need to pay your taxes to me. Otherwise, you can just go home, right? So then the gopis, they'd be like, forget you. And they would start pushing. And then there would be this pushing war. With like Srimati Radharani being the head of the chief gopi, she'd be leading the charge. And then Krishna, the chief cowherd boy, and they'd be pushing this way and pushing that way. And they'd be pushing with the pot like this. And then there's one time where sometimes the gopis would actually win, and they would push the boys back down the other way, and they would just go. And sometimes the boys would push the girls back the other way. And sometimes they would just get really, in their transcendental anger, they would just smash the pot. So there's a place where that happened one time, that they're pushing, and then finally Krishna just took one of the pots and he just smashed it against the side of the cliff, and all the yogurt just spilled out on the cliff. And to this day, there's a stain of yogurt in that spot. You can go and see it. What's that? Her veil? That's another place, right? Yeah, that's another place where her veil fell. Yeah, so different pastimes happen all over there. And then there's another time where they need to cross the lake. They need to cross the Manasi Ganga lake. And so they need to take a boat. And this is a nice pastime that we usually talk about at boat festival time. But anyways, I'll just tell it because we're talking about the games the boys play to tease the girls. So the girls need to cross the lake to get to the market on the other side, and they need to take a boat. So there's one sleepy boatman there, and he's just like, dozing off in his boat. And the girls go up, one of the girls goes down, and she's like, hey, boatman, can you take us across, please? We need to get to the other side. And he's like, oh, all right, that's going to cost you something. Anyways, they haggle for a while, and they come to what they consider to be a reasonable price. They all get into the boat with all their milk products and everything. And then this boatman, he's taking them across the river, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the storm comes. The winds start blowing, the water gets rough, the boat starts rocking, water's going in the boat because it's tipping over, and it's starting to sink, and the girls get scared, and then they're asking, the boatman's saying, the boat is going to sink, you girls need to throw your thing. We need to remove excess weight. So then he tells them, throw all your pots into the water. So they're throwing the pots. And then it's still sinking. He says, it's still too heavy. You need to throw off your jewelry. You've got these heavy ornaments, the big earrings and the necklaces and the bangles and all that, all this metal. It's like too heavy. It's sinking us. It's throwing off and then they're still sinking. So then he's like, you know what? It's been raining so hard. Your clothes are all wet. Wet clothes are very heavy. We're still sinking. You got to take off your clothes and throw them overboard. And then the girls are like, forget it. Like, you're too much. You're just too much. Get us across here quick and stop talking. So anyways, then he feels a little, intimidated because after all, he is outnumbered. So he starts rowing the boat across again, and they're like going slowly because the boat's full of water and the storm is raging. And then all of a sudden, there's a big thunder and lightning, very loud, that shakes everybody, and a big crack of lightning across the sky. And then Srimati Radharani gets scared, and then she, without even thinking what she's doing, she just grabs hold of the boatman because she's thinking, oh no, I'm going to fall, we're going in the water. She grabs hold of the boatman, and at that time she feels that this boatman has a flute here tucked in his belt, and she can smell the unique fragrance of his body, and she understands that boatman is not an ordinary boatman, it's Krishna in disguise. And then when she realizes that, then the wind stops blowing and the rain stops falling and the sun comes out, and then they have a boat ride around the lake, and they have a good time there on the boat with Krishna, and then he takes them to the other side. So the pastimes always start off with some trickery. There's a lot of like deceit and trickery and what's called paroksha vad, which means indirect speech. You say one thing, but you actually mean another, and kind of double dealing. And it starts off like that. And there's some conflict, there's some tension, there's some arguments. But then it always ends up being blissful. It always ends up being like a blissful union and ecstatic pastimes between Krishna and the gopis, who are all in love with him and want nothing more than to have some kind of interaction with Krishna. So these are, and Krishna also, he goes out with the cowherd boys, but he's always thinking, when am I going to meet the gopis? When are the girls going to come, right? When are we going to get the opportunity to tease them? So as much as he's having fun with the boys playing all these games, he's also enjoying whatever interactions he can have with the young cowherd girls of Vrindavan. And so everything is just blissful. And this is a very unique thing about Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's Leela, is that there are so many different relationships one can have with Krishna. But if you think about other incarnations of the Lord, I mean, how many relationships are you going to have with Lord Nrsingadev? Right? Lord Nrsingadev, it's like awe and reverence, He's like huge, he's powerful, he's the protector, And so we pray to Lord Nrsingadev for protection. And then even Lord Vishnu, he's very majestic and opulent, and he's very much, the supreme Lord of, and so there, either you can just kind of be a neutral bystander and appreciate his greatness, or you can actively serve him, you can fan him, you can, maybe offer him some nice food or something as a servant, you can bow down to him. But Krishna, he's just so down to earth and so real and so dynamic in his pastimes that you can be Krishna's friend, you can wrestle with him, you can play ball with him, you can tag him, you can, you can dance with him, you can be his girlfriend and, have all these fun romantic pastimes with him. You can be a parental, you can see him as your son and take care of him and, cuddle him and cook for him and put the food in his mouth and make sure he eats it, and like a mother would do to a small child. So Krishna's pastimes are the most diverse, and the relationships that we can have with Krishna are the most, there's most variety of flavors of relationship and flavors of ecstasy in those relationships. So that's why, that's one of the things that makes Krishna all attractive, which is what his name means, is all attractive, is that we can be attracted to Krishna in all the possible ways. We can experience the whole gamut, the whole range of emotions in relation to Krishna, which it's not possible so much with other incarnations. So Krishna is really the best, and we all have a relationship. We have an eternal relationship with Krishna. Right now we've forgotten Krishna, we've forgotten our eternal identity, and so we've forgotten our relationship with Krishna. But as parts and parcels of Krishna, we are made to enjoy pastimes with him. That's who we are. That's what we are meant for. We're eternal servants of Krishna. And service doesn't just mean serving as a menial servant, but the cowherd boys serve Krishna by wrestling with him and playing with him and dancing with him and being part of his band, and playing all these games. And the gopis serve Krishna by, having these transcendental arguments and responding to his teasing in their arrogant ways, with their arrogant retorts and their rebuttals. So these are all amazing ways to serve Krishna. Who would have thought that you could serve God by arguing with him or by wrestling with him or by, dancing with him? But Krishna is so amazing. His pastimes are so beautiful. So the process of Krishna consciousness, as we chant the holy names of Krishna, like every day we're getting up, making a big effort to get out of bed in the morning, come to the temple and chant the holy names, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, kirtan, and worshipping and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing about Krishna. Why? Because we're trying to purify, we're trying to cleanse all the layers of conditioning and material contamination that are covering our hearts, that are covering our pure consciousness, that are covering our identity, so that we can actually rediscover who we are and what our relationship with Krishna is, and go back to that relationship. So that's a gradual process. It's a gradual unveiling of our actual constitutional identity. And that's what we're doing with all of these things. And sometimes it feels like nothing is happening. We can go on for years chanting and feel like, oh my God, I'm still stuck in the rut of thinking that I'm this material body, and, but gradually we have the faith in the process, and gradually, eventually, one fine day, the lights start coming on and we start getting some glimpses. We start feeling some emotions that are very specific in relation to Krishna, which are indications of our eternal relationship with him. So we can long for that and pray for that and aspire for that, and in the meantime continue with the process that Prabhupada has given us, that is the sure way of success. So I will stop here and see if there are any questions or comments.
The comment you just made. Haribol, thank you so much for the impromptu class, full of nectar, showers of nectar. The comment you just made about chanting your rounds and feeling like you're spinning your wheels, that's pretty much my whole meditation all the time. But somehow it's kind of like the patient who's sick and can't keep anything down, and the holy name is like the ghee, and somehow little ghee sticks. But sometimes we just get so discouraged. You have any thoughts or comments or answers for that?
Yeah, and sometimes, when you're sick and you get medicine, it's like sometimes it even starts feeling like you're getting worse before you get better, right? So it can be like that. But if we have the thing is that we don't just have like a little, something simple. We have like a chronic, disease. We have a conditioning that's accumulated since time immemorial, right? So it's compared, Lord Chaitanya compares it to dust on a mirror, right? So if you look in a mirror that's covered with dust, you're not going to see anything. You won't see yourself at all. And so you're not able to understand what you even look like, right? So that's our situation, is we don't know what we look like. We can't see ourselves. We don't know who we are, because there's so much dust on the mirror of the mind, of the consciousness, dust covering the actual soul. So let's say if it's not just dust on the mirror, it's like mud caked on. It's like somebody just went there and like deliberately just like plastered like clay onto your mirror, and it's like that thick, right? And so you go in there with your little cloth, let's say you're just wiping it with a cloth. So if you're just wiping that hardened on mud with a cloth, you can do that for days, and you're going to look in the mirror and it's still going to look the same, right? It's just mud. So some dust it's coming off as you rub it. It's like gradually coming off. But for the time being, it still just looks like mud. It's not until you get very close to the surface, after a long time of cleaning, that you start seeing some actual, spots of mirror shining through. And then you can see like a little bit in that little tiny little spot. You can see, oh, I got a freckle on my face, or, oh, there's my eye, right? So, but you can't see the whole picture. So what do you have to do? You have to just keep, but the fact that you can see something, that's like, oh, wait, wow, I can see something. Let me keep going. Then it enthuses you, it like enlivens you, like, okay, we're getting somewhere now. Finally, a breakthrough. So that's what we're praying for in our chanting, right? We're praying for a breakthrough, to break through the layers of conditioning. But if we stop, if like after the first day of wiping on that mud-caked mirror, you're like, oh my God, I still can't see myself. This is useless. I'm giving up. Then we're never going to have a breakthrough. We're never going to start seeing the mirror. So we need to just be determined. No, the process works. I just need to keep doing it. And even if my arm gets tired, just keep going, Just switch to the other arm, but keep going. I'll get some help. Reinforcements.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was perfect.
Bye-bye.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the wonderful class, impromptu. Sometimes I feel like in the morning we'll chant, we'll be very strong in our sadhana, and we'll do the cleaning of the mirror. But then, like, throughout the day, it's like you're putting dirt all back in the consciousness by doing things that are outside of Krishna consciousness, and then on top of that, anarthas and aparadas and nam and Vaishnav. And so,
Yeah.
how do we? Because it feels like we're like cleaning the mirror a little bit, and then like throughout the day we're like piling it back on. We're dumping more mud on it. It seems.
Yeah.
By engaging in things that aren't Krishna conscious.
Mm.
So it's like feels like never ending because there's no way I'm gonna clean it off, but I keep putting
Yeah,
things on
exactly.
it.
Yeah, so in the yoga system, there's yama and niyama, right? So there are things that we need to not do and things that we need to do. There's the prohibitions and the negative prohibitions and the positive injunctions. So, so when we do something, yes. So part of the problem as to why it takes so long for us to clean the mirror is because, we're cleaning it with one hand and with the other hand we're splatting more mud on it. And therefore, like, for example, in Nectar of Instruction, it says that we need to, 1, abandon the association of non-devotees, and 2, associate with devotees. And so, like this, practically for every positive injunction, there's a prohibition. Like, don't do this, do this. Don't do this, do this. I just published a new book called The Ancient Roots of Kirtan. So it's all about chanting the holy names, either in japa or in kirtan. And so there's one chapter that's, is how to chant the external factors, like all the external things that support good chanting. And then another chapter is how to chant internal factors. So like making our internal environment, our mind, our hearts, our consciousness favorable for good chanting. So in those, I'm not sure which one it is. I think it's it's in the internal chapter. Internal factors. The way that I structured it is that each section is like, don't do this, but do this. Give up this and give up pride and practice humility. Right? Give up this and do that. So, in other words, stop splatting mud on the mirror and clean the mirror. So that's why Krishna consciousness is not just a practice, it's also a culture. Right? And actually the last chapter of that book is, the last section of that book is all about the culture of kirtan and the culture of chanting the holy name, and how Srimad Bhagavatam gives us a culture which supports chanting. And that's why 2 of the main processes of bhakti are chanting the holy names and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Because if we live the culture, if we live the lifestyle that Bhagavatam is teaching us, and we chant the holy names within the context of that super supportive spiritual culture, then it's like, throwing a match on dry fuel, right? Rather than throwing a match onto soggy, wet straw. So both those are all important, and that's part of the yamas and the niyamas, and both of them are necessary. Yeah. Okay. Did that answer your question? Yes, Gokulananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. It was a wonderful class. It was really nectarine pastimes. Thank you, Mother Kunti, for bringing that up. I remember we used to have something called Ishtagoshti and
Called what?
Ishtagoshti
Ishtagoshti.
in the brahmachari classes.
Uh-huh.
So they always mention the Ishtagoshti should be centered around discussion on chanting, because Prabhupada said 99% of our spiritual advancement depends on chanting, the quality of chanting.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, when I introspect and I start thinking about my chanting, it appears to me like in a party, let's say there is the tomato ketchup that splashes on my white clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm trying to just, rub it softly, it's not going to go because the stain is so stubborn.
Yeah.
So if this stain is so stubborn, then we have to really rub it hard, right? So the quality of the chanting depends on how I carefully guard myself from committing the 10 offenses against chanting, right? So
Yeah.
if I'm, like, for example, the last one I'm constantly doing, to be inattentive while chanting. So in left hand I have my mobile phone and the right hand I have my feedback. So it's like rubbing very softly. How do I expect, to
Yeah.
get those stubborn stains go away?
Right.
So, yeah, I think we should have a regular discussion on chanting in Bhagavatam classes, occasionally probably.
Yeah. Good. Good suggestion. Yeah, I mean, if you go back to cleaning the mirror, right, cleaning the mud off the mirror, it's like you got your cloth. If you're just kind of like, very delicately doing it, it's going to take a lot longer than if you're like really like getting the elbow grease in there, right? Or pressing on it. And, so the more we chant with intensity, the intensity of our chanting is also going to affect the results of our. So what does it mean to chant with intensity? Does it mean we need to chant louder? Does it mean that we Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna? No, intensity means attention, right? That's one aspect, attention. We need to chant with attention, like focus, not be doing another thing, not be chanting while we're having a conversation with someone else, not chanting while we're, looking at our phone, not chanting while we're, multitasking, driving or something like that. I mean, we can chant in all of those situations, but that should be extra rounds, right? That should be like, but our 16 rounds should be like focus, like this is a meditation, right? When we talk to, it's funny because when we talk to, people who are just interested non-devotees who are, coming to Krishna consciousness and wanting to learn like what we do, we talk about mantra meditation. But how many of us actually do japa as a meditation, right? If you did meditation before you came to Krishna consciousness, it wasn't looking at your phone, it wasn't driving your car, it was, when you did meditation, I did some meditation before I became a devotee when I was in college, and you would sit, you would be in a space that nothing was happening except your meditation. You'd put a do not disturb on the door, or lock your door, you'd burn a candle, you'd play some gentle music, you'd make a whole environment to support your focus. And you would just sit there and just meditate, for like an hour or however long you had set for your time for meditation. And that's all that you would do, right? It was a meditation. So we say it's a meditation, but how many of us actually do it as a meditation? We should do it as a meditation. And if the more we actually do it as a meditation, the more we're going to get, results from it, right? And especially the best time for meditation is obviously like early morning, right? We can chant at any time of the day, but I was just we were having a discussion at Krishna House yesterday evening about japa and the importance of chanting, not just like putting off your rounds until late at night and then it becomes like a burden hanging over your head, like something that you just have to get done because, you promised you would to your guru or something. But this is the time that we spend with Krishna. It's like you want to, if you want to have a good relationship with someone, you need to set aside time, to spend quality time with your spouse, with your children, it's not that, I gave this example that let's say the husband comes home from work and his wife is there and he's so tired and he's just drained and he's got a bunch of other things to do and his wife wants to spend time with him and he's just like, oh my God, I'm so tired, I just want to go to bed, but I have to talk to my wife now. And all right, fine, okay, I guess I can give her half an hour. So then you just talk to her, but you're sort of like, your mind's on other things and, you're maybe doing something else while she's talking and you're half paying attention to her and half doing attentive to something else. How's that going to affect your marriage, right? She's going to throw you out of the house. So she's like, this guy doesn't care about me. He's not interested in anything that I have to say. All he cares about is his own things. And so we're trying to establish a loving relationship with Krishna, and it takes time to build a relationship. We have to set aside quality time where we can be focused and attentive and present and be there with Krishna. You're like, Krishna, now is our time. This is the time that you and I are going to spend together, and I really want to connect with you. Why? Because I'm hoping that I can have an experience of you. I can feel your presence. I can feel your mercy. I can feel your love. And my love for you will grow due to this interaction that we're having, right? We're spending time together. It's an interaction, right? We're chanting Krishna's names. It's not just a one-way street, right? Our service is going up to Krishna. It's a service, chanting is a service. So we're offering our service up to Krishna, and his mercy is coming down, and he's purifying the heart. He's inspiring us. He's uplifting us. He's rewarding us with revelation, right, as to who we are and what we're meant to do. And we can get so much insight from by Krishna's grace while we chant and in that relationship. So we need to take it very seriously. Yeah, and then one fine day, as we're chanting, we're not just going to be meditating on how spaced out I am and how I want to be attentive, and please Krishna help me be attentive and help me, chant nicely. But we're going to actually, Krishna will reveal what his name actually is. He's going to reveal himself within his name. We're going to start to, we'll see Krishna, right? Advanced devotees, when they chant the holy names, they're literally experiencing Krishna. They're seeing Krishna's form. They're feeling Krishna's qualities. They're seeing Krishna's pastimes. All these things that we just described are within the holy name. And that's why in the song Yashamati Nandana, it says, Amala Harinam Amiya Vilasa. It literally means that all these pastimes, because it's describing all the different things that Krishna does and all the qualities that he has. And it says all of these, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying this, all of these are in the holy name when it's chanted purely. So when we chant purely, all these qualities and pastimes of Krishna open up to us. The holy name reveals these things. And then at an advanced stage of that, then we actually enter into Krishna's pastimes while we're chanting. This is what the Goswamis experienced, right? This is what great personalities like Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur were experiencing, and that's how they can give us these insights to the pastimes of Bhagavatam, is because they've experienced it, they've been there, they've seen it, they've felt it. So we can also have this experience, but we need to take the process seriously. It doesn't just happen with, doing some little lackadaisical, effort. We have to be like, this is what I'm doing. We have to do it properly. Okay, we better stop because it's already 5 minutes past time. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo.